Hello everybody, good morning and welcome to the United Stands. I'm Mark Goldbridge as we start another week. And will it be this week that we actually finally do get some conclusion to what's happening with the manager? We've got loads to talk about on the show for you this morning. I need to get my list of things to talk about, which I've just... Crap preparation, Bridge. No, I've got it there. That's fine. But we've got Fabrizio Romano on the show at 12:30 today, where we'll be getting the latest on all the transfer talk, all the manager talk. But there is a bit more clarity that's come out from Fabrizio this morning around Thomas Tuchel, who apparently was always Manchester United's #1 priority if they decided to sack Erik ten Hag. We'll talk about that. Jadon Sancho is up for sale, no matter who the manager is. This is coming in from Simon Stone, and it's coming in from the BBC, so it's very well sourced, that one. Also, Joshua Zirkzee of Bologna is back on Manchester United's list as well. We're also going to talk about the midfield situation and what's going on there, as all options like Humland of Denmark and Sporting Lisbon, Onana at Everton, Neves at Benfica are all very expensive. And is this why Man United are looking at Neves? Because there's not really an outlier cheap option there other than Ederson, who appears might be going to Liverpool. We're also going to have a look at the transfers and, yeah, a few other bits as well. So lots to get into this Monday morning. Chris says it's a shambles. On time, Bridge says William. Well, look, I'm hoping it's first and foremost. I hope it's going to be a big week. I hope we're going to get some news. But what I will say at the start is this is a news show. In the past, there's been times where I've said, look, you're going to hear something today. You're going to hear something this week about this, that, and the other. I'm just going to be consistent here, and I think, thankfully, a lot of people are waking up to this. Nobody knows what's going to happen. No one knows when it's going to happen. There is no timeline. There is, you know, some people think we're waiting until the end of the month to sack Ten Hag to get it out of this financial year. Some people think we're going to wait for the Euros and Southgate. I think it was interesting last night that more people were saying that they've heard that United like Southgate. I don't know why this is considered to be a myth and being made up. I mean, I tweeted something this morning from March about Gareth Southgate. There's a myth out there that no credible source has ever linked us to Southgate, and then it's a rumour. It's not a rumour. Fabrizio was on the show in March saying that Manchester United, people at Man United and INEOS admire Gareth Southgate. We'll ask him about him at 12:30. Southgate's still very much on the radar. But where we're going to start this morning is quite an interesting piece coming out from Fabrizio Romano. This is brand new this morning. Like I say, we've got him on the show at 12:30 where we'll ask him about what's happening with the manager situation now. But I think we can box off the Tuchel story because this is basically what has been said from Fabrizio Romano in an article this morning. He says there's been a big update on the Manchester United manager situation, as my understanding now is that Thomas Tuchel and Man United are not expected to reach an agreement for the former Bayern Munich manager to become the manager at Old Trafford. I can confirm contacts were made re a meeting with Manchester United. Tuchel was always considered the favourite candidate in case United did decide to part ways with Ten Hag. So that's a big statement. Tuchel was the considered favourite if they decided to part ways with Ten Hag. A decision on Ten Hag has not yet been made. What's going on? As I've said recently, Man United are having meetings with several agents and representatives of managers to make sure they assess all the options on the market before making a decision on a new manager or on keeping Erik ten Hag. Tuchel was the favourite of these options because he had direct conversations with Manchester United and Sir Jim Ratcliffe. But my understanding now is that Tuchel wants to take a break from football this summer. Tuchel doesn't want to take any job for now, so his decision is to leave the conversations. He wants to take a break. He had talks with Man United, but he's currently planning to relax and wait for new opportunities in the future. Tuchel was the closest to getting the job in case they considered a change. Let's see what happens. Man United might try and make one last effort, but we will have to see what happens. I mean, look, that's all from Fabrizio Romano. Fabrizio, David Ornstein, they are probably the two most credible outlets for news in football. And there's some interesting stuff in there. It reads like Tuchel decided he didn't want to be part of it anymore. It reads like Man United could go and beg him to come back. It reads like Tuchel is going to wait and see if there's better opportunities out there. And honestly, it reads like there is some semblance of truth, because I've always said about Tuchel, to me, it looked like he was flirting. When the Chelsea job was there, I love Chelsea. Man United job was there. I love the Premier League. You know, Barcelona job was there and looking for challenges. I think Tuchel is basically looking at a job that suits him. I don't think he's a guy that's looking at Man United and going, that's the be-all and end-all. And you know, maybe we're not the be-all and end-all for everybody. But yeah, I think it's interesting that Tuchel is considered to be the favourite for the job up until now. What does that add to the situation? Frustration, confusion, and ultimately, I think when you read what Fabrizio has said, that Man United are speaking to representatives and agents of managers to understand what the market's like if they decide to part ways with Erik ten Hag. I would say we were doing this 3 months ago. I still do not understand in relation to this week, and we will be talking about transfers, Rob, because there's a lot to talk about. But in relation to this week and this manager and what is happening, everybody I speak to, everybody I listen to, I think everybody is in total unison of what football club behaves like this. What football club does this? It's fine to do it in March. It's fine to do it in May. It's fine to do it in February because the season is on and you can just crack on with it and no one's really taking any notice. But when the season ends, it's a well-established fact that everybody is looking at who's going to get sold, who's going to get bought. And that is the big frustration here, is that the season is over and we're not buying and we're not selling because we're interviewing and speaking to managers that we could have spoken to weeks and months ago and should have spoken to weeks and months ago. And it's the delay at this point. And it also leads to the question of, have INEOS got a new plan now? What plan are they on? Did they start off on plan A and they're down to plan F? Like, what is it they're actually doing? Because the only thing that's coming out, as I said last night, is just complete and utter incompetence. Whatever decision they make now, I don't think anybody is going to look at it and go, oh, I saw the plan. Oh, I get it now. I understand why we've done this. Yes. Oh, what a move. I don't think we're going to get that. Either way, if they keep Ten Hag, if they get rid of him, I don't think we're all going to look at it and go, oh, I see. Yeah, masterstroke. I don't see that. I don't. I mean, look at the Dan Ashworth situation. He's a director of football. He's not Lionel Messi. We were getting him in February. We still haven't got him in June. It's not like when he walks in the door, we're going to go, oh, it was worth it. Here he is. He's Dan the man. He's a fucking director of football. And we've been waiting for months on him as well. They, at the moment, look very, very, very indecisive and incompetent. And I think, personally, very good record in billionaireism. Very good record in coaching, cycling. But in football, there's a world of difference between the French League and the Premier League, and there's a galaxy of difference between Manchester United and Nice, and they look very, very, very inexperienced in dealing with big football clubs. When you look at the way Real Madrid behave, Liverpool behave, PSG behave, like, they make mistakes, but they don't hang themselves out to dry like this. It just looks incompetent. Somebody said this in the chat last night. Can you imagine what Barcelona and Real Madrid fans would be doing about this? Can you imagine what Real Madrid fans and Barcelona fans would be doing if they were in this situation now? Season finished 2.5 weeks ago and they were looking to sack Ancelotti, or, you know, Barcelona, you know, have only just replaced a manager, to be fair. But they're not to know who it's going to be. And they're interviewing all sorts of shit. They'd be going mad. Man United, for some reason, our fan base just doesn't get things done. You know, we don't. And I don't blame any part of the fan base for that, but we don't. I think the Glazers have ground us down over 20 years, that we just don't collectively get anything done. We just sit there moaning. And that's why the Glazers survive so long. They don't really take any notice of us. But I think at other clubs, they're more accountable. At Real Madrid, they're more accountable at Barcelona, and I just don't think other clubs would be putting up with this. It's a joke. It's an absolute joke. And as new owners as well, to come in and completely disrespect the fan base like this and just leave them hanging out to dry, it's not a good start. It's not a good start, Jim. It's not a good start. My hope, Man United looking for the philosophy of the club and which manager can build a philosophy. Ten Hag sell his philosophy as applying for it, says Harold. I think Tuchel will be approached in a year's time, says Keel. Ten Hag should stick it to the Glazers and INEOS and walk away. They're a joke. He deserves more respect, says Victor. Good news, Eric Ten Hag will use the academy. That is the Man United way, says Michael. Do you think INEOS thought we could get our top target Tuchel, or we stick with Eric? Hence the frustration at the leaks and thinking last week of decisions, says Levi. Look, yeah, media, leaks, different stories, etc. We shouldn't have been going for Tuchel, in my opinion, anyway. Regardless of whether he was the favourite or not. This is a guy that's been sacked by PSG. He's been sacked by Bayern. He's been sacked by Chelsea. He left Dortmund in bad circumstances as well. He has a reputation for being highly strung. He has a reputation for falling out with the owners. We shouldn't have been going anywhere near him anyway. So, again, bad judgment, but you can only follow the news. Barcelona, Liverpool, Bayern, Chelsea all sorted their manager situation well on time, says Sanil. When cycling specialists control football clubs, you get this, says Sanil. Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know. Sir Jim Radcliffe, Sir David Brailsford, Blanc, Barada, Wilcox, Ashworth's not there yet. To me, it just seems way too top heavy with people who have an opinion. At one point, it looked like it was a dream team, and at the moment, it makes you scream team. I think there's too many. What power does Sir David Brailsford have over Blanc? What power does Blanc have compared to Barada? What power does Sir Jim have compared to Joel Glazer? What power does Wilcox have compared to Sir David Brailsford? These are questions that hopefully somebody will clarify at some point, but who has the power? Like Sir David Brailsford, very, very good technician around mentality and cycling and sports science, but what does he know about Manchester United? Does he supersede into Sir Jim's ear Blanc, who rebuilt Juventus and had a big part to play at PSG? Barada, who was a big part of Man City? Who has the power? Because if it's shared power, you've always got to have a boss. Who is the boss? I don't know. Mark, what do you want? Mean our fans don't do anything. Our fans was a major part in the failure of the Super League, says Scottish MF1. Manchester United fans were not a big part in the failure of the Super League. All football fans were a part of that. I mean, look, the Super League reaction was amazing from everybody. Every club. They were outside Stamford Bridge. They were outside Arsenal. But in relation to the Glazers, any Man United fan would sit there and say, we couldn't get them out. And that, I think, is always going to be something that... And the United fan base, unfortunately, is quite divided. There's different people with different opinions. But collectively, every United fan wanted the Glazers out, and they're still here. So forget the Super League. The Super League wasn't going to happen regardless of what United fans did. It wasn't going to happen. We have to take responsibility for things that are ours. And I'm saying, I think the Glazers are very lucky because at other football clubs around the world, they wouldn't be in charge. At United, the Glazers still have the power, says Nigel. And I think that's the problem, isn't it? Anyway, let's move on. There is a lot going on this morning, and we can't just keep waiting for this decision that may or may not come today. We don't know. Lots and lots and lots to talk about. I'm going to start off with this story from about Joshua Zirkzee, actually. It came out from Sky yesterday. Sort of got lost with the Tuchel story. Joshua Zirkzee is... Oh, God. Question mark. Here we go. Don't normally get caught out by this. Early 20s, plays for Bologna, was at Bayern Munich. They had a first buyback clause. Release clause of £34 million. Is he Dutch or is he German? I think he's Dutch. But he might be German. Anyway, it matters not. Had a very good season in Italy. £34 million release clause. Sky Sports are saying that Arsenal and Manchester United are monitoring the situation. He is Dutch. Yes, thank you very much. Interesting thing about Zirkzee, and we'll ask Fabrizio about this live at 12:30. I spoke to Fabrizio about 3 months ago about Zirkzee, and we were linked to him, and Fabrizio said, I don't see it. I don't think he is the right profile of striker for what Manchester United are looking at, style of play and profile. I don't think. He said he's a good player, but I don't think he's the sort of striker that's going to suit Manchester United. So I've always said with Xerxes, it's not a player we're going to go for. However, it'd be interesting to get an update because the price profile of Xerxes is far more appealing than that of a Sesko or anybody else. And Ken says, I want Sesko. I like the idea of Sesko. We're obviously going to see him in the Euros playing against England, but for Slovenia. But I think that when it comes down to Xerxes, let's see what Fabrizio's got to say at lunchtime, because he's said to us before that he doesn't really feel that he's the sort of player that Man United would go for. But it's interesting that Sky Sports have linked us to him. And as I said, release clause of about £34 million. I mean, we will be asking Fabrizio about, I've got a massive list of players, you know, Frimpong, Elise, Branthwaite, Todibo, the striker situation. It has gone really quiet. And as David B says, I'm quite bored with the start of this transfer window. I wouldn't say that it's boring. Well, yeah, well, I do agree with you, David. It is boring, but it doesn't negate the point that it actually should be action-packed. There's so much to do. I was writing the list out of questions for Fabrizio before the show. Oh, my God. Just on transfers, I was up to 20 players that we need an update on. Like, there's so many when you think about it. Like I said, Todibo, Frimpong, left-back, Branthwaite, Guehi, midfielders, wingers, attackers, who's going to be sold. Like, there's just so many individual stories around transfers that we actually need updates on, that we were getting more updates on in late March than we are now in the middle of June, because it's absolutely dead. And it's been deadened and killed by this story. Now, the cynic will say it's been done deliberately. They want to talk. It's in INEOS's interest to keep this carrying on until July, because then you're not spending money, which they don't have money to do. So we'll have to wait and see, but we can still get the updates on that. But hey, I suppose Xerxes, look, Sky were reporting it yesterday, Man United and Arsenal interested. He's a good player, no doubt about that, but he's not really a player I've heard has been linked to positively for a long time. So Sky is saying that we are looking at him price-wise, so I suppose he would be quite interesting. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But a very significant update that came in yesterday as well from Simon Stone and the BBC. And as I've said before, you know, we've done this long enough to know what to think about different outlets and different journalists. Simon Stone works for the BBC. If you're not living in the UK, the BBC, you've probably heard of it. They've been maybe the World Service or whatever. The British Broadcasting Corporation. It is the initial TV station of the UK. It's funded by the taxpayer, but they don't have adverts. It's a British institution. And the point of what I'm saying that for is that it's not the sort of... Simon Stone's not going to go, Man United are looking at Xerxes, like, unless we actually are. There is a credibility to their level of reporting, because they can't just throw out speculation. It's got to be well sourced. Now, people will say the BBC don't always get it right. Oh, they don't. But there is that establishment authority to what they do. And certainly around Simon Stone, I've been following his career for years. He ain't the sort of guy that goes, United are really close to signing Messi. You know, there'll be something behind it. So he said about Jadon Sancho, regardless of who the manager is, Manchester United are looking to sell Sancho for £40 million. Well, this is going to be very interesting, because there has been stories around there that one of the reasons they might be looking to get rid of Ten Hag is because of certain players that Man United can't sell, that they need to somehow try and get something out of them. So you sack Ten Hag, you bring Sancho back, you save yourself having to sell him, and therefore is interesting that he's up for sale regardless of who the manager is. Now, I would applaud this. I don't know about you, I would actually applaud this. If Sancho's up for sale regardless of who the manager's going to be, that is a club decision that is really, really important. And apparently Fabrizio said the same last night, says Mark. I applaud. Look, I'll be critical of players I like if they play badly. And I'll be critical of INEOS if I think they're bad owners, of course. Why should we respect and trust people that need to earn it? But I'll also never be blinkered. Like, if Scott McTominay scores a worldie, I'll call it a worldie, even though I don't want him to play for United. I will respect good choices and outcomes. And if INEOS are saying that Jadon Sancho is for sale, regardless of who the manager is, then I will applaud that, because that would be my instinct if I was the CEO. And I think it would be some of yours as well. For me, Jadon Sancho was bought 3 years ago for £75 million under 3 different managers. He hasn't hit any level of consistency. And there has been numerous occasions where, whether you like it or not, there's been a failure to respect the shirt of Manchester United. And for me, that demonstrates enough over 3 years that he doesn't have the mentality or ability to be a player that we're going to build with, because we can't keep making mistakes. So I would be looking to sell him as well. So I think that if that is the decision, I agree with it. The challenge will be who will pay £40 million for him. Now, personally, the flip side of that coin is I think the Man United journey for Sancho needs to be over. But as we know, you can be in a relationship and all the problems keep resurfacing, and then you go in a new relationship and you learn the mistakes of the past relationship, and in that new relationship, it's much better. And it'll be the same for Sancho. I think Sancho needs a break. Man United need a break. Go to another club, learn your mistakes of the past, and he could be a really good player for somebody. And now, if I was a Tottenham, or I was a Dortmund, or I was a Juventus, I would look at Sancho for 40 million quid and go, he's still not 25. Like, there is a player there that we could, you know, really, really use. But the problem is, as Lucas says, he's on 300k a week. And that isn't Ten Hag's fault, and that isn't Sir Jim Radcliffe's fault. He's on 300k a week. And you're going to really struggle to find a club that's going to give you £40 million and 300k a week. Unfortunately, that will be the problem. Dan says Fabrizio said the same yesterday afternoon, Mark, as well. So it's obviously good sourced information. Enderim says it's better to wait and get the right choice rather than get someone quickly. It will be De Zerbi and Ashworth who lead the INEOS project, says Enderim. But, I mean, it's an interesting statement, but why is De Zerbi the guy to lead the Manchester United project? Why? What has he done that makes him a Man United manager? He's managed Brighton badly last season, and he's very stubborn about a style of play that no manager plays at the highest level, because every manager, even Pep Guardiola, will change his tactics based on scenarios in game, which De Zerbi won't. De Zerbi, to me, is an idealist. He's a bit like Bielsa. He sticks by his principles and doesn't win things. And I think if you're going to manage at the top level, then you need to understand that game situations will lead to you having to abandon your principles and adapt. And I don't think we've seen anything from De Zerbi yet. He's an idealist. When it works well, and look, I was a big fan of De Zerbi up until probably Christmas. And from Christmas to May, I was really disappointed with Brighton. I know they had injuries, but the amount of games he was getting turned over, like Fulham, 3-0. I think Luton battered them as well. Roma in the Europa League. And I was like, I know you've got injuries, mate, but just shut it down a little bit. Just play a different way. And he wouldn't do it. And I think that's a massive red flag. I really do. I'm quite bored of David's done that. Lovely, 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 lovely. Toby says, I've said it from the start. No difference between INEOS and the Glazers. They're making ridiculous crap decisions and taking forever to make them. Glazers out. Toby. Everybody. Toby and everybody. There's no difference between the Glazers and INEOS. Why should there be? Why did we allow ourselves to be told that there would be? INEOS own 25%. The Glazers own over half of the club. They're working together. Why would there be any difference? We were stupid to think there would. 92% of all assets of Man United are paid through debt. The considerations for which manager or players are all based on that. Financials are dire. Check them out, says Rami. And Sticks says, you would think we would have to take a hit on the transfer fee for Sancho so they can afford his wages, says Sticks there as well. So look, Sancho apparently is up for sale no matter what. Levi says, can you ask Fabrizio specifically, is there any reason why we wouldn't buy Todibo at the price and with the Nice connection? It is on the list, Levi. There's a few questions we want to get some clarity on, because I think one thing we're struggling for as United fans at the moment is that we are lacking clarity. Praj says you need to clear out your sinuses. I don't. I've got a bit of a croaky throat because I was out on Saturday night doing a lot of shouting, so I've damaged my vocal cords. It's nothing to do with that. In other news, let's talk about the midfield situation, because there has been some reports coming out from Portugal about Humlen, who is the midfielder for Sporting Lisbon. He will be playing for Denmark against England as well. A very highly sought after midfielder. Somebody that Man United have been linked to. Now, Sporting Lisbon's coach is Amorim, who surprisingly is still going to be Sporting Lisbon's coach, considering how many jobs there are out there and how highly rated he is. Now, apparently that's because Sporting Lisbon set a very high release clause for Amorim that no club was willing to pay. So, interestingly, that Amorim will still be the Sporting Lisbon coach, and he's apparently saying the same thing that has prevented him getting out of Sporting Lisbon. If people come knocking on the door for Humlen, they will have to pay his 80 million release clause. So I think that the scenario there is not that interesting for Man United, because are we going to pay 80 million euros for a Danish young midfielder from Sporting Lisbon? Probably not. But the interesting thing is that we need to buy a midfielder, with Casemiro potentially going to Saudi Arabia, and a complete and utter lack of defensive midfielders in that squad anyway. I don't think Mainu should be developed as a holding midfielder. I think he's too good. I think he should be an 8. Casemiro is probably going to go, even if he doesn't. Is he good enough anymore? Amrabat, I mean, for me, can only be a backup. We do need to bring somebody in that position. But isn't it interesting that you've got Humlen, Rabiot, Onana at Everton, and potentially João Neves at Benfica, who can do those roles, who are all somewhat overpriced. I mean, Rabiot is free, but we've tried twice to get him, and we know he will ask for silly wages. That is something we can't pay. So he would be a free, but his signing on fee and wages would be a problem, because he would want, I would say, in excess of 250k a week, which would put him on more money than Bruno, which would be problematic. So Rabiot's probably too expensive on wages. And Nana from Everton, well, they're talking 50, 60 million, and I just don't see that. So he's too expensive. Humlen at Sporting Lisbon for 80 million euros is too expensive. And then João Neves at Benfica, 100 million euros release clause, again, too expensive. So you look at Man United's midfield options, and every one of them are really, really expensive. And therefore, I have a bit of a theory. Is that not why we might be trying to do something with Benfica? Because he is the best option, Neves, and he is expensive. But if your alternative... Look, basically, if Benfica are saying we want £80 million package, which is about 100 million euros, but then Everton wants 60 package for Onana, and Sporting Lisbon wants 70 package for Humlen, and then you've got Rabiot who wants ridiculous wages, maybe you are at a point where you go, well, it's worth finding the extra 10, 20 million for Neves, because we're going to overpay on the others anyway. So maybe that's what it's all about. Maybe there is a genuine interest in Neves, because the alternatives are very expensive as well. So you'd be better off spending a little bit more to get Neves. Maybe there's something in that. Are there any outliers? And what I mean by that is, are there any midfielders that are well priced that could be good? Well, the number one option for me would be Ederson at Atalanta. I think he's a really good player, and I think whoever gets him, and it may well be Liverpool, I think that you will get him for under 40 million quid. And I don't really understand why we've not gone there, because Humlen's very, very expensive. Onana's very expensive. Rabiot's wages are very expensive. And João Neves is very expensive. And then you've got Ederson at Atalanta, who's available for about 35 million quid. What a perfect player to go for that is efficient. So I think he's good. Some people are saying, what about Fofana? I'm not convinced about him. 25 million from Monaco, says Daniel. I'm not convinced about him. Thuram at Nice isn't really a defensive midfielder, and I'm not convinced by him either. I think Ederson is a good one, but apparently he might be going to Liverpool, and there ends the problem, isn't it? Elise was a player that we looked like we were going to get Chelsea. Ederson is a player that looks good to get Liverpool. So, you know, and then you come back to the scenario around the manager again, don't you? And you go, everything is going on at other clubs and we're not doing anything. Palhinha is going to Bayern Munich for 35 million, says Aaron. Yeah, I like Palhinha a lot, and I think he reminds me, and always has reminded me, a lot of Michael Carrick. And I would love him to come to Manchester United, but I don't know whether Fulham have done a no Premier League sale rule or something, because to be honest with you, Why would Newcastle not go for him? Why would Liverpool not go for him? You know, why would Arsenal not go for him? Why would Spurs not go for him? I think Palhinha is really, really good. And for him to be going to Bayern Munich for 35 million, I don't understand why a Premier League club's not going for him at all. It doesn't make any sense to me. I know he's 28 or 29, but I still think that he's got everything in the Premier League to be a really good player. But Bayern Munich nearly got him last summer, so maybe there's a promise or something like that. I don't know. So Jim talks all the time about City football, Barada and Ashworth connection to De Zerbi. Listen how ex-players that played for De Zerbi talk about him, says Enderim. Mate, I'll listen to what you've got to say, but it's not going to change what I said. I don't care what Sir Jim Radcliffe says about Man City. I don't care what Barada or Dan Ashworth say. I've supported Man United all my life, as have many of you. I know more about Man United than Barada and Ashworth, and I appear to know more than Sir Jim at the moment. So I look at De Zerbi. I've seen Moyes manage this club, Ten Hag manage this club, Sir Alex manage this club, Mourinho, Rangnick, Ollie. I look at De Zerbi and there's red flags. Sorry, there is. You know, if he's the manager, I hope he does well, but I think there's big red flags. He's massively inexperienced. He's massively stubborn. He's an idealist. He doesn't adapt. He keeps plugging the same style of football and he doesn't adapt. And I think that is not the behaviour of somebody that manages a top club. Because I've seen Pep Guardiola change in-game all the time. All the time. I've seen Pep Guardiola focus on defence in games at times. Like watch Man City play against Villa before Christmas. Villa had 60% possession and way more shots. Man City weren't playing on the halfway line, ticky-tacking around. They were trying to be a defensive unit. And Pep Guardiola will do that when he needs to do that. Jurgen Klopp will certainly do it when he needs to do it. Arteta will do it, like when they went to the Etihad. But De Zerbi won't do it. And he's spoken about that publicly many times. He will not change the principle. I think he said something along the lines of, playing football the right way is more important than winning trophies. But it's not. It actually isn't. Like in a league season, play your way 75% of the season. But for 25% of it, be adaptive. Get the win. Win when you're playing badly. That's what the top managers do. And De Zerbi hasn't shown that yet. He's a very, very, very good style of footballer, manager. And I was a big fan of his up until Christmas. But this last 6 months, some of his interviews, stubbornness, and like they were 2-0 down against Luton after 20 minutes. And I think it ended up 4-0. And I expected them to come back. And they didn't because he kept doing the same thing and he wouldn't change. And that will frustrate people. That will frustrate Liverpool fans if he'd managed there. That would frustrate Bayern Munich fans. It would frustrate Barcelona fans. You've got to be adaptable at the top level. Something I wanted to say completely just dropped out of my head. Xerxes was spoken about. Oh, yeah, I know what I was going to talk about. Interesting, this. Do you think Potter was better than De Zerbi? Well, you're not taking me down that road because I don't want to talk about Potter in case he gets the job. Chris Hendry says, Mark, I'd like to know how much the Glazers are giving towards transfers as they still own 75%. Everything we hear is what INEOS are doing, says Chris. Well, again, Simon Stone said it 2 weeks ago, didn't he? That Joel Glazer actually is involved in the conversations about the manager. Now, we have been fed nonsense because we were told that INEOS were definitely in control of the football side of things and not the Glazers, and yet Joel Glazer is involved in it to some extent, which, you know, just shows you, doesn't it? The Glazers are still there. They're still there and they're still very, very much involved. There was a question that was just asked that I will answer before I go on to the next bit. Fabrizio Romano has apparently said in the next days, next hours, we expect Manchester United to make a decision on Erik ten Hag. I mean, bless Fabrizio. We've got him on at 12:30. Yeah, I mean, look, I can tell you that. You know, I can tell you that. I speak to people as well. Like, I told you on Friday morning, people for some reason thought Friday was going to be decision day. And I was told on Friday morning, and I told you on the Friday morning show, there's nothing special about Friday compared to Thursday or Wednesday or the previous Tuesday. Like, Man United don't have it planned in that, yeah, midday today we're going to drop it. It's not, we're not at that point. D-Day, whatever you want to call it, Jacinda, we're not. And Fabrizio's right. He is right. Like, in the next few days or hours, well, 3 hours is very different to 3 days, isn't it? And that just tells you everything. Nobody knows when they're going to announce it. Now, I believe it won't be in the next financial year in July, because that's still 3 weeks away. I don't think we're going to be waiting until then. I genuinely do think it will be at some point in the next few days. But as Fabrizio said, it could be in the next few hours. It will just drop. But nobody knows when, because I don't actually think INEOS know what they're doing yet. They're probably sat there somewhere going, we don't know what to do. The big question is, do I or you think... Well, look, I can run this poll. We've not done it for a while now. Either or, Ten Hag in or Ten Hag out. Somebody just mentioned that, so we'll do that for you. Do I think Ten Hag's going to keep his job? Was the question. And then I want to talk about the transfer thing again, which is quite interesting. Look, I said last week, you can't deny this. I said last week, I'm 75% sure he's going to keep his job. And despite the talks with Tuchel and despite everything else, I said I'm not moving away from that because I've heard nothing either way to make me change that. So I'm still 75% sure that Ten Hag will keep his job, because there's just... The talks with the managers were going on anyway. They've been going on for ages. Yes, Ten Hag's been undermined, but he hasn't walked and he still hasn't been sacked. So as much as people say INEOS have behaved badly, and I think they have, why didn't they sack him 2 weeks ago? If they were this is why I'm 75% sure they'll keep him, because if they were definitely getting rid of him, they could have sacked him and spoken to managers. But the fact they've kept him whilst talking to other managers says to me they still think he might be the best option whilst they talk to other managers. Like, they could have just sacked him and been talking to other managers, and they haven't done it. And also, he's clearly the best candidate available. So, look, they might still sack him. I'm not saying they're not going to. They might make a massive mistake and sack him, and they'll look really, really, really stupid. But it's clearly the best option, and it's clearly the right thing to do. And as I say, 2 weeks ago, we beat the best team in the league, deservedly, with half our defence not fit and half our defence not available. And we tactically beat them brilliantly in the first half, and we won the FA Cup. And we've won 2 trophies in 2 years. We're bringing through young players, and I genuinely think next year is going to be a good year for us. So for me, it's absolutely obvious that we should keep him. I think he's a better option than Tuchel. I think he's a better option than Pochettino. I think they will keep him, but yeah, that's what I think. Hamza says, a left-back replacement since Shaw is injury-prone. I can't help to understand why United don't go in for Robinson from Fulham, who's a very good left-back. I like him as well, Hamza. Barada starts on the 13th. Do you think they're waiting on him to start before making the decision, says Damien. I think it's the 13th of July, though, mate, not June. Why don't you name the players you know dislike Eric, says Fian. I didn't say I know who they are. I said I could guess who they are, but the reason I won't guess who they are, Fian, is because it's slanderous, and that's not fair. Mark, how unrealistic is the summer transfer window? Todibo, Kirkez, Olise, Neves, and Kuna. I'd love, mate, Sean, I'd love it. I'd love it, and it's not unrealistic. Todibo, Kirkez, Olise, Neves, and Kuna. It's not unrealistic. But based on how the summer's going at the moment, I think we've got no chance. But I like it. I mean, I'd like 2 centre-backs, if I'm being honest. But, you know, you've got a centre-back, a left-back, a winger, a midfielder, and a forward. You know, yeah, I do like it, but I don't think we look like we're going to do it at all, do we? Which is interesting, actually. Muzz says it's unlikely, Sean. just talking about Luke Shaw and talking about signings, etc. I was looking at this today, and there is this myth, in my opinion, that Manchester United, Erik ten Hag transfers haven't worked. And I wrote down all of Ten Hag's signings, and I went through them all, and I looked at who has held their value or increased in value since Ten Hag bought them, and also, you know, who's been flops, etc. So, looking at it, Martinez has definitely increased in value, and that's despite him being out for a season. He's definitely been a good signing, and I would argue he's definitely increased in value. Played very well for Argentina last night, by the way. So Martinez has been a success. Rasmus has been a success. There's no doubt that he's retained value. You could argue he's increased in value, but he's a striker that's well respected across Europe, and obviously still very, very young. So Rasmus and Martinez are definitely successes. Malacia, yeah, has been a fail, but ultimately was bought in very cheaply to be a backup left back and has failed because he's had a ridiculously bad injury. Eriksson, I don't think has failed as a free transfer. I think he did really, really well, and then Andy Carroll basically ended his career. So I think Eriksson and Malacia we were very unlucky with. Casemiro was player of the year for me in year one and was dreadful last year. But in fairness to Casemiro, we overpaid. And he was never going to hold his value because he was always going to decrease in value. Like he's like buying a new car. The minute you take him out the forecourt, he depreciates in value. You're not gonna hold value on Casemiro anyway. Anthony has obviously been the biggest flop so far. 2 years, 80 million euros. It's not worked. Onana and Mount, the case is still open on them. They've had 1 year. It's been up and down for Onana. It's been injury prone for Mount. So I would argue that Anthony and Casemiro are probably the two where we've wasted the most money on. Martinez and Rasmus have probably been the two most successful ones. Onana and Mount, the jury is still out. And Malacia and Eriksson, I wouldn't call them either way. I think Eriksson on a free worked really well until the Carroll tackle. And Malacia for 15 million as a backup left back basically was doing okay, and then he got injured. Oh, of course, Johnny Evans is a free transfer. You can't say that hasn't worked. So, yeah, I think there is this tendency to say that the Ten Hag transfers have been bad, but really, Casemiro and Anthony, okay, I'll take that on board. But Rasmus Martinez, very good. Malacia, Eriksson, average. And then Onana and Mount, let's see what happens next season. But on top of that, of course, you've got people like Mainu, Garnacho, Dalot, all increased in value and reputation under Ten Hag as well. So I just think, you know, balanced reporting is something that we don't tend to get. And there is this nonsense that we spoke about yesterday around Mainu and how he was treated by the press on Friday night when he didn't actually play that bad for England. But there is this sort of general myth going around that the signings we've made under Ten Hag have been expensive flops. And the reality is we overpaid on a lot of players, but that's not on Ten Hag. But actually the only two that have sort of failed really are Casemiro and Anthony. And that brings us back to, has there ever been a Brazilian player at Man United that's consistently been good? You know, we're a bit jinxed there. David Fever, welcome to the Members Club. You're a legend. And Araki says, transfers haven't worked out, but also our loanees, Mabry, Palestri, have performed poorly, making it hard to sell them. Donny van der Beek, Anthony Martial last season. We don't really do that well. I mean, Mason Greenwood's done well, actually. Let's not you know, pretend that that's not been the case. I think Mason Greenwood has done well. Do you think we're going to get anything announced today, Mark? I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I would like to see something happen today, and I think we're all on the edge of our seats for it. But I genuinely don't know, and I think it's been really hard over the last couple of weeks. I mean, honestly, I might be in the minority, but I think they ruined the FA Cup. I really do think they ruined the FA Cup. The day before, that was disgusting. And then winning the FA Cup like we did, I felt like that they took a percentage of enjoyment out of that, because we didn't get the full enjoyment out of that because of how they behaved. And then the last 2 weeks has been very, very difficult. But as a community, I think we've dealt with it quite well, because I think there's an element of realism there. Like, they do admire Gareth Southgate. I don't know why people don't accept it. They did consider Tuchel, amazingly. I don't understand why. They have spoken about Pochettino, which is amazing, stunning. You know, this is the level of competency we have running the football club at the moment. But I also think within the fan base there is this whole, well, I don't have to get on board with it. I don't have. You can't force trust. You can't force trust and respect. They've got to earn it, and at the moment they're not earning it. And as I said, if they give Gareth Southgate the job, I'm Gareth Southgate out from day one. That's just the way it's going to be. It's not going to be very nice, but it will. I will be. If they sack Ten Hag, then I will ask really serious questions of INEOS. In my mind, I'll be like, who are they? What are they good at? What did they do to Nice? And I'll start scrutinising it, because I just think it shows a level of incompetence. But around any announcement, I think we've all moved past the fact that it, you know, is it going to be today? Is it going to be tomorrow? Was it going to be Friday? We are dealing with a set of people that don't really seem to have got their feet under the table in relation to who they are owning here. They don't seem to understand the machine that Manchester United is. They don't seem to understand that you have to service the machine. They don't seem to understand that you can't just go off talking to managers and leave a manager there for weeks and just leave it. Manchester United is not only a football club, it's an entity that needs servicing on a sometimes hourly basis, but certainly a daily basis. And INEOS haven't figured that out. So it might be today, it might be tomorrow, it might be Friday, it might be Thursday, it might be next week. I don't know. They will make a decision at some point, and the sooner the better. But they don't seem to have grasped the fact that really they should have been prioritising getting this done a lot quicker. But where we end up, I don't know. But we will get something at some point, I suppose. Is Ashworth really any good, says Shaunak. Bloom, the owner of Brighton, was the one who used to take the calls on transfers with his analytics and betting experience. Look, I'll go with my opinion on Ashworth, that he is a good choice for director of football based on his reputation. But the great thing about reputation, it's like a player. You buy a player, you're very excited. They put a Man United shirt on, you see him week in, week out, and you go, they're not as good as I thought they were. With Dan Ashworth, we'll have to judge him on his work at Manchester United. He hasn't even started yet. He comes with a good reputation. Is the reputation all hype? We'll find out. Because if it is, he'll find out very, very quickly. I do have concerns about his obsession about Gareth Southgate, because for me, that's a major weakness. But let's hope the strengths outshine the weaknesses, really. Is Darren Fletcher meddling in the background, telling INEOS he can manage the club, says Sajin. I mean, we don't hear from Darren Fletcher, and I think that's the best thing, isn't it? You know, I liked him as a player. He's well respected in the club. But you know, he should be somebody that's learning the trade, not giving out advice. 89% want Ten Hag to stay. Not surprised by that. I think it's the obvious thing to do, but unfortunately, we're not in control of that decision. Lloyd says, the thing about Ten Hag signings is that they aren't his first choice, and Casemiro is a United signing. Overpaying is the board's fault. Yeah, I should have added that in, Lloyd. You're absolutely correct. I mean, even Martinez wasn't first choice. I don't think Rasmus was first choice. I think it was Kane and Timber. Ericsson was a free. Anthony, I mean, Anthony was done right at the end of the window, so probably wasn't first choice. Casemiro certainly wasn't first choice. Mason Mount and Onana, I think you can't judge at the moment, to be fair. So, nobody is happy finishing 8th, but why can't we see potential and give the manager time and try and build his projects, says Kieran. PC Master says, keeping quiet in the background is what keeps Fletcher in his job. Masterstroke. And Ten Hag in all the way. Give him another contract, says Brian. In an ideal world, that's the news I want to break this week. Ten Hag staying and he signs a new contract, because that would just give us a little bit of clarity and a little bit of stability, because there are levels to this game. What if they say that Ten Hag is staying, but there's no new contract? Well, we know, and this is a really important point, What if they keep Ten Hag? They don't give him a new contract. I'm telling you now, we will go into next season the same way last season went, where any bad result will be, he's got to go. Every loss next season, they will be going Tuchel, Southgate, you know, and they may well do it. So if you're going to stick with Ten Hag, surely a review means that this is the guy you want to work with. I mean, this review's gone on for way too long around the manager. But if you stick with Ten Hag, you don't use him as a bloody plaster. You actually give him a contract and work with him. Like, what is the point in keeping him? And then when it goes wrong, we'll just get rid of him anyway, because you've just wasted your review. They've got to give him a new contract, and they've got to back him properly. Otherwise, there's just no point. So, yeah. But we've never heard anything about a contract. You know what? I could spend hours with you live going, there's so many grey areas here that we can't, you know, at times I've said maybe the delay has been they're working out a new contract with Ten Hag. It doesn't feel like we're working on a new contract with Ten Hag. I mean, Ten Hag is back from holiday now and is still apparently unsure what's going to happen. So it doesn't sound like we're negotiating a contract with him either. And this is where my head is. That makes me think they're going to sack him again. But then I think, well, why haven't they sacked him already? The targets available are shit. It's weird. It's just really, really weird. There's no doubt about that. Take a rest, Mark. You look ill, says Shaunik. I'm not ill. I've just got a bit of a... my throat is just a bit... My throat's not even sore. I've just... too much shouting on Saturday night, and I was up too late, so I've just damaged my vocal cords. But no, I'm not ill. I'm absolutely fine. Thanks everyone for watching. Smash the like on the video. We've got Fabrizio Romano on the show in an hour and a half. This is going to be a really big show, so smash a subscribe, get your notifications on with the bell, or do a diary reminder. 12:30 today, Fabrizio's on the show. We've got a huge list to talk to him about, but we will be asking, where do United go now? Are we actually in talks with Southgate? What is happening with Todibo? What is happening with the midfield? What striker are we looking at? Are we talking to Xerxes? Loads to get into. Tune in at 12:30 for that. Obviously, we'll go live if anything breaks. 8 o'clock show tonight as usual. And I think if it's a quiet afternoon, I'm going to do another EAFC career mode. So you can tune in for that as well. Take care, everyone. Euros. Thanks for watching. We'll ask him about Elise, yes. I don't think anything else is coming out. I mean, also, just keep an eye out over the next few hours, because there will be some journalists that have been on holiday that I think are going to come back. Apparently, Galatasaray would like to sign Aaron Wan-Bissaka and Scott McTominay. There ain't no way Scott McTominay is leaving Manchester to go and live in Turkey. And there's nothing wrong with living in Turkey, but it's just that whole British players don't do that sort of stuff. It's very, very rare, and McTominay is not for sale. We won't sell McTominay. I don't see that happening. I don't think Wan-Bissaka will go there either. Thanks everyone for... I just can't believe what I've just watched there. Thanks everyone for watching. I'll speak to you all in a bit. Take care.